Don't ever think your response won't affect a kid. Because this is it. Hi guys. Welcome to Megabyte Monday. How are you? I'm going to wait because it does take a while for you to get the notification that I'm here. If you're here, please let me know. I'm testing out this Facebook Live thing because I'm finding that a lot of people prefer it over Instagram. So I don't know. But tonight we are going to get real personal. I'm going to do my best to not cry, which will be great. So hello, hi, how are you? So let me know that you're here. Just comment so I can see it because I don't know you're here until you comment, basically. Really? So I'm going to give it a second. Yeah, you see and hear me. That's so exciting. So yeah, we're gonna wait because I did kind of kick this on a little bit early, which is fine. It's whatever. But in the meantime, I'll introduce myself if this is your first time here. I'm Meg. I am a second grade teacher in Nebraska. And hello, everyone. And I do Megabyte Mondays, and typically they take place on Instagram Live. So this is the first one I'm doing on Facebook Live, and we're gonna see how it goes. And so far, I'm kind of liking it, but I guess we'll see. You're more than welcome to tap hearts and likes throughout the process. The other day, Facebook Live did kick me off. I have no idea why it did, but just a heads up, if I disappear, more than likely I will be back. It's just temperamental sometimes, and I don't know why. So today what we're going to talk about is a topic that is highly uncomfortable for me. It is something that I kind of avoid talking about on a regular basis. Like I'll touch on it and then I'll kind of back away. Hi, Kristen! I love that you put your handle because you know I don't know. So we're going to talk about something called Dyscalculia, and you're probably like, Dyscalculia, what? Like, what is this? So we're going to talk about what it is because it is what I have. It's clearly not something that you can see. It's not the reason that I'm so short. It has nothing to do with that, and it has everything to do with my brain and the way that I process. And the reason that I'm taking a leap of faith and talking about this is, as an educator, anytime I talk about my struggles with math, there's a lot of misunderstanding, and there's not a lot of news about this, and as I've researched it and learned more about it to better understand myself, I'm finding that as educators, we should know what this is, and what better way for me to sit here in front of you and say like, hey, I have this and it's really uncomfortable for me. I'm 28. I just turned 28. I had to think. I just turned 28 years old, and I still struggle with it on a daily basis, and it affects my life. And it's not going to go away. There is no cure for this. So let's get started. So I'm gonna cringe a little bit and squirm a little bit because it is it's uncomfortable. So I'm not gonna tell you that it's not, because it's something that I've dealt with my entire life and have been made fun of for my entire life, and I've had people take advantage of it because they view it as a weakness of mine, and it's just kind of the way the world works, unfortunately, but I'm here to talk about it. So thank you for being here and being positive and supportive, and I love you all for it, and we're gonna get going. So what is dyscalculia? Well, first, it's a really hard word to say. But I looked at the definition, and I have it on my computer screen, which is where I'm looking. So it says, the definition, and I'm going to say all these words wrong, a severe difficulty in making arithmetical mathematical calculations as a result of a brain disorder. So what this means, it doesn't mean that I was dropped on my head when I was little. It literally means I have something that is just the way that my brain works. I wasn't born prematurely. There were no warning signs that I would have this problem growing up. You don't know. It is completely the way that your brain processes, and there will be reasons that come into light later on in my story. But it is a brain disorder. So there you go. So it's labeled as a brain disorder. And like I said before, it's a lifelong condition that has no cure. Like, there's no magic pill that all of a sudden is going to help my brain function better or understand things better. That's just not going to happen. And the weird thing about dyscalculia is it's just as common as dyslexia. And dyslexia, almost everyone has encountered or dealt with or knows someone or has had a student that has dyslexia. Dyscalculia is just as common. I don't have dyslexia. I am great with words and spelling. That is my forte. I am not a numbers person. And honestly, that's what I was told my whole life. Like, oh, math is just hard. You know, you're just not going to get it. Like, there's math people and then there's not math people. You're just not a math person. You're just great at words. Okay, no. No, and that's a society thing. And what society has kind of done is society views reading as something that's a struggle, and it's supposed to be a struggle because that's where you learn as far as reading goes. But in our society, math is viewed as something that's just supposed to be hard. Like, it's just supposed to be hard. Well, okay, why? Why is math just supposed to be hard? Like, where did that come from? I don't know, but that's kind of the reason that dyscalculia is not something that you always see on the forefront. And I'm going to give you all these definitions, and then I'm going to jump into my story. So what you're going to see with dyscalculia, like some signs or some symptoms of this brain disorder, is basically they're going to struggle with recognizing signs, basic facts. I still to this day, it was really uncomfortable. I still to this day struggle with remembering basic math facts. I've gotten better as I've become a teacher, because there are just things that come up repetitively, and I've learned how to, like, recognize when my dyscalculia is kind of, like, preventing my brain from processing things, but it wasn't easy. So basic math facts have always been hard, and someone with dyscalculia, like, I can understand the logic and the reasoning behind why this is happening or why a math problem, you know, why this is all happening. However, I can't apply it or know when to apply it to solve a problem. That was one of the most difficult things. When you get into, like, multi-step problems, I have a really hard time with, like, working memory. Great as far as, like, reading and everything, but if you throw a number in there, I can't remember it. So I have to write things down, and I have to have it organized. And me writing things down, if I become anxious, I'm going to write it down wrong. And I do it frequently without even recognizing it. I will flip numbers, I will flip math processes, so on and so forth. But that's just a symptom of dyscalculia that I've learned. And it's not the same as dyslexia. Like, yes, I flip numbers. I will also flip math. Oh, hi, Mom. You gotta leave because I'm gonna cry. So you gotta go. I love you, but you gotta go. But it's not the same as dyslexia. Like, yes, there are some moments where I will flip things, but it's not even in the same way that dyslexia functions. It's not even taking place in the same part of your brain, I'm learning. So I've learned a lot about it, and it's really uncomfortable, and I'm going to keep going. So let's talk about my story, shall we? My mother would probably be a little bit better to interview on when she realized, or when they realized, my parents, me struggling with this. But there, like, some of the research that I've read is saying that, you know, people with dyscalculia will usually struggle and have ADD or ADHD, or have been born prematurely. I am none of those things. I was very good at spelling. I was very good at reading. I was apparently above average, considered above average in all subject areas except math, which, if you know anything about a learning disability, that's how it presents itself. When everything is above average and one thing is not, something is not clicking. And I kind of remember it showing up in first grade. First grade is where I became aware that I sucked at math. And that was the only way that I could process it, was that I sucked at math. I was dumb. Everything else I could get, but I could not get math. And because people saw me just get these things, all of a sudden they thought that I just didn't want to try when it came to math. They thought I was being irresponsible. They thought I was being lazy. I got made fun of by classmates. But one of the stories that, like, just will never leave me is in first grade. I had a teacher, and her name was Mrs. Norman, and I loved her. And she had a Doberman named Jet, who I was obsessed with. And she was this sweet little lady that just did amazing things. And Mrs. Norman, when I was in her class, she had a student teacher, Miss Hawk. I will never forget this lady's name. I will never forget this lady's face. Miss Hawk came in to be a student teacher. And Miss Hawk was kind of like this, like, lively person, but I didn't like her. Being around her made me feel sick because of the way that she talked to me and the way that she treated me during math. I vividly remember learning basic addition and having manipulatives, like blocks, on my desk lined up. And all I wanted, I raised my hand, and all I wanted was someone to confirm that I was on the right track. I'm doing this right. That's all I wanted. Am I in the right direction? I don't need you to give me the answer. I don't need you to do it for me. I need you to tell me if I did this right, if I have it set up right. Because I don't want to go through this whole process and be wrong. And she was a big lady with big blonde curly hair, and she came over. And I said, okay, I just need to know, is this right? Like, is this right? And she looked at me, she goes, I don't know what you're saying. Okay, like, I'm in first grade. Like, I don't know. I don't have a huge vocabulary to communicate with you what I'm trying to get across, but, like, is this right? So in her response, she becomes frustrated, and she's leaning over my desk, and she's breathing down the front of my face. And I feel like vomiting and shrinking down and crawling under my desk and just dying at that moment. And she's leaning over my desk, and she stripes up, and they were bears. They weren't cubes. They were bear counters. They were these adorable little bear counters that I absolutely loved up until this moment. She scoops my bear counters up that I had nicely organized, and all of a sudden she, like, shoves them around my desk, and she goes, what is it? I don't know. What you just did was so intense and so overwhelming. I don't know what you want me to do. So that's all she did. She leaned over me. She messed up my bear counters the way that I had purposely organized them so it made sense to me. She scooped him up. She leaned over and said, what is it? And I just sat there. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I felt like I was in trouble. And I could tell that she was frustrated with me, but I didn't know why. I was just asking if I was on the right track. And it was just a repetitive, and then she would kind of move them around again. What is it? Okay, well, if you keep moving them around, I don't know. I don't know how to answer this. I don't know. So basically what it ended up resulting in is me crying. I don't know if I was ever on the right track. I don't know if I ever got the answer to the problem. But what I do know is that I despise bear counters up until this day and do not have them in my classroom because they are such a negative memory. And it was awful. It was terrible. And I remember hating. Oh, it was terrible. And I'm trying really hard not to cry. She was something else. And I'm 28. And this is still my reaction. And it will stop. But don't ever think your response won't affect a kid. Because this is it. One lady, maybe a 5-minute conversation, and it's affected me my whole life. So, I told you it would be uncomfortable. The reason this is one of the reasons I wanted to share this with you. Now, if you give me a couple seconds, I'll pull myself together and we'll be good. But, needless to say, she was not a great person, and I later found out in life that she was removed from her education program. Thank God, because she left a mark on me, not in a positive way, in my life. So, moving on, math then became a day of, like, a time in my school day where I literally wanted to vomit. I had stomach aches, I felt ill, I wanted to go home, I did anything to get out of it. I was made fun of. Timed tests were something that gave me so much anxiety, I couldn't put it into words. It made me feel sick to know, yeah, mom's here. I had hives, I would cry, I wouldn't want to go to school, and it affected me. So I moved on through my schooling thinking that I was just stupid. I was great. I was so good at reading and spelling and writing and sharing those things, and I loved dance, which is kind of weird because research will show you that kids with dyscalculia shouldn't understand, like, rhythms. But that's one of the things that I was very good at, was rhythm and dance and music. That made sense to me because I'm now finding that it made numbers something that was kinesthetic. It made numbers movement. I can do movements. I can do visual. And when you take those things out of mathematics, especially for a kid like me who struggled so much, I don't have anything else to use. You've taken all of my lifelines away from me. So that was a big point. I remember sitting on my bedroom floor with my mom and trying to practice multiplication facts, which I still do not know to this day. I cannot tell you my math facts. I can tell you everything multiplied by 1, no problem, and then from there I've got issues. If you multiply anything by 9, I still use my fingers. Yes, I'm 28 years old and I will still use my fingers. I actually went to a math tutor for years, multiple math tutors for years, just to help me keep up with average classroom students in math. I learned touch dot math, and I still use that today. When adding and subtracting things, I'll still use my fingers to check stuff, and I usually try to hide it from my students, which I probably shouldn't. But I still, I'm embarrassed because a good chunk of my life has been spent saying, you know, you suck at math, like you're not a numbers person. And even like my husband had a hard time understanding why it was so hard for me to manage money and understand interest rates and so on and so forth. In college, on a regular basis, I would have to take my checkbook home to have my parents fix the register because it was off every single time. And what I kind of realized growing up is it was hard. And then I don't remember when this happened, but at one point, my mom, and we've been seeking answers forever. My parents had me tested for special education. They had me tested for dyslexia. Results came back negative. I had teachers from then on get really frustrated with me or tell me that I was being lazy or that I just didn't try or they didn't know what I was doing and they couldn't understand. I basically wasn't paying attention. So it was really disheartening. There was no answer. There was no, we knew that something was wrong, But what it was coming up to is just me being dumb. I can't do it. I'm not going to be able to do it. I'm stupid. And that's all it ever amounted to. And there was a moment where my mom found a book, and it's called My 13th Winter. And it's about a girl. It's a memoir about a girl who has dyscalculia. And my mom and I both read it. And it was shocking. It was extremely eye-opening to hear this girl share her stories and these vivid memories. And the one that stuck out was her and her mom sitting on her bedroom floor trying to do multiplication math facts, and she's crying and her mom's crying out of frustration because they don't know why she can't get it. And she doesn't know why she can't get it. And you feel dumb. You just do. And so what this has kind of amounted to is I realized then that dyscalculia was something, and I wasn't dumb. Not that anybody ever thought I was dumb, but I thought I was dumb. I thought I was stupid. And I thought that, it was this huge flaw, and people made fun of me for it, and teachers were frustrated with me, and they weren't very understanding, and it was just crappy. I mean, all the way around, it was just crappy. So it followed me into college, even. And I remember in college going through math methods and, all the leading research and all these things, and you have peers teach lessons. And I remember having peers teach lessons and me not understand, and then look at me and be like, you're in college, you should be able to do this. And it's like, yeah, I know. And so it kind of became a joke. And that's kind of my go-to. So when I'm uncomfortable or when one of my insecurities pops out, which this math one is huge, I use humor, which I'm sure you're all like, oh, what? Like, you use humor? Yeah, like, I use humor. Shocker, right? I use humor to soften the blow. So if I say it first, in my mind, if I say it first and make fun of myself first, whatever you're about to say is not going to be as bad. It's not going to hurt me as bad because I just took all the wind out of your sails because I said it first. I said it about myself first. And that's kind of how I functioned. From second grade on, humor was my way to prevent myself from being hurt of people making fun of me. And still is to this day, not gonna lie. Yeah, there you go. This is gonna get real raw, sorry. But it was very interesting. So in college, I'm sitting there and I had a professor that was in charge of math methods. And I had to go up to the education office for, I don't know what I was doing up there. But I took her this book called My 13th Winter, and asked her to read it because it was the learning disability that I had. And I was very concerned that if I were to ever be hired in a grade, I wouldn't be able to teach that grade because I can't do math. So she read the book, and a few weeks later I went back and I met with her. And she gave it back to me and things like that. And it was a very positive conversation until there was one sentence that was said that has always stuck with me. And it was so disheartening. And I'm not gonna cry. So it was very, she said that it was very enlightening and it was a great thing to be aware of. And me having it, yes, would definitely make me a better teacher. And she butted it up to the comment of, but you will never be able to teach upper grades. The math in upper grades will be too hard for you. You will never be able to teach upper grades. All right, cool. Good to know. So because I suck at math, I'm not going to be able to teach upper grades. So I took that to heart. I was like, all right, I'm never going to be an upper grades teacher. And I don't know that my personality would work for upper grades, but that definitely, I felt like I had been put in a box. My whole life I'd felt dumb. And then I had come to this this revelation of like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one that struggles with this, I'm not the only one that has this, to feeling freedom basically, and then having someone who's helping you reach your passion in life look at you and say, you're not going to be able to teach upper grades. All right. It's like, okay. Okay. All right. So I went from feeling really, really relieved to right back to, all right, this is going to hold me back. I'm never going to get over it. I'm never going to succeed. I'm going to have to stay in lower grades. So I went in, I got my first teaching job. I taught first grade. And what I started to realize was I was very fearful of teaching math in my first year of teaching. And we used, what was it called? It has a butterfly on it. And it doesn't have like a, somebody help me. I can't even see the comments anymore. What was it? Is it expressions? Is it math No, that's what we use. I'll think of it later. But we used a new math program that really broke down and had math presented in a visual manner, which I had never seen. I mean, yeah, like we had manipulatives, but a lot of my workbooks in elementary school were like black ink, envisions. Thank you, envisions. Okay, so we had envisions, and it was very interesting my first year. And I really liked the way that they had the intros to the lessons that would really break it down, and they would reiterate, and it was always with visuals. So what ended up happening was I kind of took it and ran with it. So I would have my kids, instead of sitting in their desks, because I don't sit when I teach, like, I sit when I teach guided reading, but like I like to be up and sit on the floor and things like that. So I would have kids go stand up by the board, and I'd have them split, or I'd have them get in groups, or I'd have them represent numbers in different ways, and I didn't realize what I was doing. But that's how I became comfortable with math, was using those visuals, or using rhythm, or using music, or using manipulatives, because that's what made it make sense to me. If I'm going to be able to teach it, I better know what I'm talking about. And I felt comfortable because first grade math, I had a college professor tell me I'd never be able to teach upper grades. So I'm teaching first grade math, folks, like basics, number sense, which I don't have any at this point. And I'm teaching the basics of math, and I felt comfortable. For the first time in my life, I felt comfortable until I saw a kid struggle. And I didn't know what to do. Because a part of me was like, you know what, kid, like, I've got my own issues with math, and I know how you're feeling, and I don't want to be the Miss Hawk of you. Like, I don't want that for you. I really don't. So, I'm going to have to, like, bring in someone else to help you because I don't know what to do. I got really uncomfortable, and I regret that big time. But it's all because I've been told my whole life that I'm just not a numbers person. It's just not going to work. So what ended up happening was I figured out ways to help the child, but basically it was just slowing things down. And I actually did. There was actually a kid, when we started getting into, at the very end of first grade, they began to look at like double digits. And that's when I started to realize what I used to do. So when I was introduced to double digit addition or subtraction, or a double digit against a single digit, so you always start in the ones place. So I would add the ones place and then subtract the tens and then somehow get an answer that was nowhere near where I should have been at all. I would also do the common thing of, like, when you had to subtract, I would take that bottom number and go up, because I didn't know how to get the bigger number on top, but there was a bigger number there, and I was just going to make it work. Which I still see kids doing to this day. Subtraction, double, like multi-digit anything was terrible, because I would become so anxious and so nervous that I would do one thing in one area and then do a different thing and then do a different thing, and my answer would be nowhere close, and I would be like, you know what, I'm done with it and we're moving on. Being told to redo math problems was the death of me. I hated it. It was just another way that I felt like I was, okay, like I did what I thought I was supposed to. You handing this back to me saying go redo it, I don't know what to do. And I don't know what to tell you to say, like, hey, I don't know what to do. So it was really interesting. It was really hard. But what I want you to take away from this is that dyscalculia is a thing. And it's very hard to notice, especially because even me as an adult does a great job of hiding it. I do not keep a checkbook. My husband does that. I still struggle with like balancing money and understanding money. I hoard money and then I kind of spend it and then I'm like, wait. And it's hard for me to get it. But basically what I've learned, and this was just recent, I've really learned to embrace my learning disability because I was very lucky to go with part of my staff to the NCTM math conference in St. Louis this last school year. And there I was so lucky. I had no idea. I was so lucky to listen to Jo Boaler? Bowler? She's from Stanford in Oxford. And she runs the website called U Cubed. Did I say her name right? I don't know if I said her name. I don't know. Anyways, she's amazing. And she did this keynote at the very end about the brain and math and all of these studies that she's done. And I literally sat there with my friend Carly and just bawled. Just cried at this keynote talking about math. And I was like, this is weird because I don't like math. I'm terrible at it, but what she was saying made so much sense and validated my entire life struggle up to this point. So basically what happens, and it explains the feeling that I feel physically when I run into a math problem. So basically what this says is anxiety. Math time tests trigger so much anxiety in students that your brain does not actually open up to receive the math facts. That actually ends up clogging up your brain and preventing that information from coming forward. So my math anxiety basically shuts down my brain. And it does not allow any information to flow from one area to the other. That right there explains the feeling that I have. Because when I run into, or when I begin to become anxious without even noting, like, the representation of numbers gives me anxiety. Point blank. Trying to read an analog clock till this day gives me anxiety. Trying to think of how much change I'm supposed to be getting back if I'm using cash somewhere gives me anxiety. And yes, I am 28 years old. But what I can explain to you, or try to explain to you, is the feeling that I have is it basically feels like I have this thought process of trying to keep myself calm, one. And two, I'm trying to understand what's happening, and then all of a sudden it goes blank. Everything stops. My brain doesn't produce any more of that thought. I go back and I try to go through it again, and I feel like I'm basically running into a wall over and over and over and over again. The only way that I've found to get myself out of that feeling is to literally like leave the area and have to come back to it, or take a step back. Like in my classroom, I've been writing math problems and I've been going because I know we got to go somewhere, and lo and behold, my anxiety takes over. I've written half the math problem wrong. I step back and my kids are like, you said the number 37, but you wrote 73. Right, so now you're not going to get the answer that I wanted you to. I understand. Let me fix this. And one of the things that I've done as a teacher is I always warn my students that I have this. And I always have, I've talked about this before, I think in my last video. I always have one kid that wants to call me out or make fun of me. But what that does is it helps me become human for my students, because there is this weird like superhero air that teachers suddenly have just walking into a room apparently to these students. But when I struggle or when I make that mistake, all of a sudden I become human. And when I have that one kid that wants to come at me, they don't let it happen. I don't let it happen, and my students don't let it happen. Because all of a sudden I'm a human and they don't want me to hurt. And that's great. So dyscalculia is something that I live with on a daily basis. And this has been extremely uncomfortable. As you can see, I've done all these weird twitches and tics and everything else. But yeah, that's my story. And I'll come back with more information about dyscalculia if you'd like me to. But I thought that I would take this moment and share my story and my struggle with it, because one, I know that I can't be the only one that has this or has gone through this. And two, as educators, I think it's really important that we understand that dyscalculia is just as common as dyslexia. Unfortunately, it's a little bit harder to recognize, but you have to realize that society just deems math to be more complex than reading, when really they're about the same when it comes to complexity. But it's kind of like comparing apples to oranges, I guess. But you might have a kid that has that, and there's nothing you can do to fix it except be understanding and don't be the Miss Hawk that I had. Because as you saw, that memory is deeply rooted in my discomfort and my struggle with this learning disability that I have. But yeah, if you have questions, don't be afraid to ask. I'll come back with more videos and do anything that I can, because I do think it is important. But our half hour is up. So I'm going to leave you with this. Don't pity me. If anything, take this and use it to your advantage, and understand that, one, this was super uncomfortable, and two, I'm glad that I shared it, and I'm hoping that if anything, you can learn from this and help a student like me not feel the way that I feel about myself at the age of 28. So that's what I'm hoping. That's why I'm putting this out here. So feel free to share, leave comments, send me a message if you got questions. There's lots of amazing research that's happening out there. Just go look. And I'll talk to you guys later. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being so supportive. But yeah, there you go. There's my story.